Okay, picture this. She posts a photo, flaunting visible post-baby definition. What, like 2 weeks after announcing her daughter's birth, the internet immediately decided it was biologically impossible. And the headline, the one that just blew up everywhere, influencer Nara Smith must have used a surrogate to have her fourth child.
Welcome to Starscope Report. We are diving deep into this really unprecedented controversy surrounding social media personality Nara Smith and the birth of her daughter, Fani Golden. Our mission today, to unpack the critical factual error that really ignited this massive online firestorm, and also analyze exactly why the surrogacy conspiracy theory became, well, the key that critics needed to kind of tear down her whole perfect online image.
Yeah, this deep dive, it's definitely more than just celebrity gossip, isn't it? It's such a perfect case study in how an audience resists something that just feels too curated, too perfect to be real. You have this single photograph, right, combined with a frankly flawed timeline. And boom, it was the perfect ammunition for everyone who already suspected her entire brand wasn't, quite genuine. Okay, let's really get into it, starting with that one detail, the photo that basically broke the internet. October 24th, Nara posts on her Instagram story. She's holding the baby. And she's wearing those, like, white, low-rise linen pants and a beige crop sweater. Her stomach, totally flat, right there on display.
That image was absolutely the physical catalyst. It's the exact moment everyone fixated on.
And almost immediately, you had major outlets like People, Yahoo News, they just jumped on it, framing it as happening 14 days after announcing the birth. That timeline, 14 days, that became the bedrock of the whole surrogacy idea.
And that's exactly where it all went wrong. It's fascinating, really, because the public and the media completely conflated 14 days after announcement with 14 days postpartum. It seems like a small thing, but that distinction, that's the key factual error that fueled this entire mess.
Right. So if the sources are accurate, what was the actual time gap between the birth itself and that viral photo?
Okay, so our sources confirm the baby, Fani Golden Smith, was actually born way back on September 27th. The public announcement didn't happen until October 11th. So when that photo went up on October 24th, she wasn't 14 days postpartum at all. She was approximately 27 days postpartum.
27 days, okay, almost a full month, not 2 weeks. That is a huge difference in recovery time. But hang on, her whole defense seems to hinge on 27 days being plausible. Does the audience even care about plausibility at that point? Isn't the issue that even 27 days sets, like, an impossible standard for most women?
Well, that's the critical insight, isn't it? Look, a recovery like that in 27 days is significantly more plausible than 14, yes. But it's still exceptionally fast. We can probably attribute that to, amazing genetics, maybe intensive resources, maybe both. Who knows? But the entire theory, the she must have used a surrogate idea, was built squarely on that 14-day misinterpretation. An error amplified by, let's be honest, media outlets probably rushing to get the story out, chasing clicks based on the announcement date, not the actual birth facts.
So that initial wrong timeline created this sort of vacuum, this cognitive gap that critics just rushed in to fill. But even when you correct it to 27 days, the reaction was still immediate disbelief, resentment even. We saw the surrogacy theory just take off on platforms like Reddit and TikTok.
Yeah, the public response kind of fell into three main buckets, three ways people tried to rationalize that flat stomach. The first, and definitely the most dramatic, was the hoax. That's the surrogacy theory. She just didn't carry the child, period. The second was the artifice. People arguing, well, the photo must have been heavily edited, digitally altered, to create something impossible.
Okay, hoax, artifice, and the third one.
The third was the unfair advantage. This is where people sort of conceded, okay, maybe the image is real, but only because of genetics and resources. Like, she must have a personal chef, a trainer, a whole team of nannies managing the kids while she just recovers.
Right, the unfair advantage. That one's interesting because it really highlights the, socioeconomic anger underneath it all.
Exactly. It's very telling. For a lot of users, this wasn't just about how quickly she lost weight. It was about privilege. They see her recovery as something, outsourced, something only possible with extreme wealth, extreme support systems. It makes her totally unrelatable. And honestly, this rationalization is often just a milder version of the hoax, right? It still implies her reality is fundamentally unattainable and therefore kind of inauthentic to the average person watching.
So the audience was basically already primed to disbelieve her whole reality because of her existing brand. Like when she makes these incredibly laborious things, making bubble gum from scratch,
right,
or cereal, looks simple using #EasyRecipe, it's not a huge leap for them to then disbelieve her easy postpartum recovery too. That's the core of this narrative resistance you mentioned.
Absolutely. That postpartum photo, it was just the ultimate, maybe final straw for that effortless perfection brand she'd built. When an influencer's curated reality pushes too far past what the audience can suspend their disbelief for, the audience fights back. They create a counter-narrative like surrogacy to try and expose what they see as, well, a fraud.
What's really fascinating here, though, is how the surrogacy idea didn't just pop up out of nowhere just to explain the photo. It gained so much traction because it felt like this master theory, a single explanation that suddenly made sense of multiple long-standing contradictions in her public image.
Exactly. This is where all the threads connect. Critics were already wrestling with several inconsistencies in her story, and the surrogacy rumor just neatly tied them all up with a bow. For instance, think about her contested age. Nara Smith says she's 24, but there are these persistent online theories, claiming she's actually older, maybe 28, 29, citing old articles from her wedding back in 2020. That already laid the groundwork, this narrative of fundamental inauthenticity about who she even is.
Yeah, I remember those posts. And then you have the whole aesthetic thing, the Tradwife debate. She performs this super elaborate domestic goddess cooking style, which immediately gets her slapped with the Tradwife label. But then she strongly denies it. So she's a working mom, it's a modern 50-50 household. That gap between what people saw and what she said always created doubt, didn't it?
It definitely fueled skepticism. And we can't forget the sheer pace of her motherhood journey. I mean, 4 children very quickly. And the couple had actually said publicly quite clearly they were absolutely done having kids after their 3rd, Whimsy Lou. So then, boom, the announcement of a surprise baby so soon after. That struck a lot of people as the final major contradiction. Like, wait, what?
Okay, so walk us through the critics' logic here. How does the surrogacy rumor suddenly make all those different threads, the age, the Tradwife thing, the surprise baby, make sense to them?
Well, for them, this grand theory of doubt, the surrogacy idea, it just rationalizes everything. It explains the quote-unquote impossible body, right? Because in their theory, she didn't personally go through childbirth. It explains the surprise baby because, well, it wasn't some spontaneous change of heart. It was a planned, maybe outsourced surrogacy arrangement. And most importantly, it reinforces their core belief that she curates a completely fraudulent identity, that everything is outsourced, which then validates all their earlier skepticism about her age, about her denying the domestic persona she clearly embodies visually. That flat stomach photo wasn't the cause of the doubt. It was just the piece of physical proof they felt they needed to confirm what they already suspected, that she's manufactured.
Wow. Okay, so given the scale of that backlash, her response strategy was obviously critical. And we saw this pretty sophisticated two-pronged approach to try and control the narrative, right?
That's right. First, you had the very high-profile implicit response. That came just a few days later, on October 27th. She posted to her main Instagram feed this sort of poetic caption, carefully avoiding the explicit rumor, but claiming the pregnancy by saying her body has been home to 4 other bodies and calling women's bodies pure magic. It kept the response very subtle, very aligned with her established brand aesthetic.
Yeah, it reframed the whole thing in this kind of aspirational, almost spiritual language. It completely sidestepped the messy online gossip itself.
Precisely. But then, almost at the same time, there was the explicit denial. This was reported in less prominent media outlets. That report confirmed she explicitly denied allegations and reaffirmed her personal choice to conceive naturally, which suggests, they delivered a firm, functional denial, maybe for legal reasons or for dedicated followers, while keeping her highly curated main feed clean of direct conflict. Smart, in a way.
But that implicit post, the pure magic one, that didn't exactly quell the controversy, did it? In fact, it triggered a whole secondary backlash almost immediately.
No, it really didn't work as intended. And that's because the visual and the text were seen as deeply contradictory. The text claimed she was slowing down, not trying to force it back, sort of aiming for this moment of relatability, of body acceptance. But the photo that went with it, it was another picture showing a taut, completely flat stomach. So critics just jumped on it, calling it a humble brag. They found the language insensitive, exclusionary, especially for women struggling with typical postpartum bodies or fertility issues. Why? Because the visual evidence just seemed so unattainable for most people.
So she was completely trapped. Criticized for being too perfect, which sparked the surrogacy theory in the first place, and then criticized again for pretending not to be perfect, or for using vulnerable language while still looking perfect. That triggered the backlash to her response.
That is the authenticity trap right there in a nutshell. Her brand, built entirely on this aesthetic of effortless perfection, It just leaves absolutely no room for vulnerability, no room for messiness. Her attempt at having a genuine conversation about body acceptance, it was rejected. Why? Because her visual reality is just perceived as too far removed from the audience's own lived experience to ever feel truly authentic. At the end of the day, she lost the battle for relatability.
This whole saga really kicked off by one incorrect timeline detail. It just demonstrates the inherent instability of these perfection-based influencer brands. The audience, they demand authenticity, but that authenticity has to feel plausibly real, not just something achievable via like massive outsourcing or freak genetics. And once an influencer crosses that line, that believability threshold, the audience will actively invent counter-narratives, these grand theories of doubt, basically, to reclaim their own sense of what's real.
And, that brings us right back to our first point. The media's role in all this. We focused a lot on Nara's brand and her response, which is crucial, but you have to wonder, if major news outlets hadn't rushed the story, if they hadn't amplified that crucial 14-day timeline error, would the surrogacy theory, that perfect storm of pre-existing skepticism, have ever locked into place with such immediate, such explosive force? It's a stark reminder, isn't it? Sometimes the first narrative out the gate, the fastest one, is the one that sticks, no matter the actual facts.
You've been listening to Starscope Report, where we uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.